Today I'm very excited for this video because I get to introduce my great friend Tyler to my channel and bring him to the community and have him share his expertise. Tyler is somebody who I talk to multiple times every single day. He's really the behind the scenes, the brain behind a lot of our designs and the things that we do at Nations First. So he's become a great asset and resource for our business and a phenomenal friend. He's like a brother to me. So Tyler, thanks so much for joining us, man. I really appreciate you being here.
I appreciate you having me on, Danny.
It's crazy. Like nobody gets to see how much work you put in for my clients on a day-to-day basis and how many like late nights, early mornings, weekends, we're constantly working on stuff. I did a video on Denzel's channel recently where we broke down a case study with somebody that you were a part of helping. And I had mentioned in the video, I was like, it didn't just get to a point where we could refer them to members of our team like Tyler and other professionals. We vetted all those people and we compared different professionals before we even made the introductions for the client to have the opportunity to work with them. And so it really spoke to kind of the behind the scenes, like the work that goes in to make those meetings, each one special for every client. And you're the master of that. So I'm excited to bring you in because you have a concept you share with me that I don't want to steal any thunder from. I just want to bring you on to share, but I'm enthralled by it. I think it's extremely valuable, and I think more people need to see it. And I think what's cool about this is we're going to try to make it one video. It might be a part two, but I want to dive into this case study and really go deep on where you use this, youth life policy.
Yeah, so happy to do so. So I've always had this idea of, I'm part of Life 180 with Chris, for those of you that don't know. And, I hear this, the becoming your bank, but also like, should I buy whole life on my child and all of these things? And so I started looking. And for those of you who don't know, I have a 11-month-old now, my first daughter. So it
Okay.
really started my, figuring out like, what does this look like and what are all the use cases? And when I did all these studies, I was blown away, right, on all the different options.
Yeah.
So I ended up we purchased one. My daughter's name is Layla, and I was sharing the idea with Danny, and you loved it. Um, so I'm gonna go ahead and dive right in. Is that okay, Danny?
Dude, yeah, I want to get into the numbers and I want to share this design that you put together because I think it's really sophisticated.
Yeah. So the first thing that I always like to say, Danny, is when I am thinking about designing a whole life for a child, right?
Mhm.
I think of three main points, right? The first one is a little bit of flexibility, right? Because you don't necessarily know if you're, if you have another child, if budgetary constraints change. So it's hard to have a lot of flexibility with whole life, but it is possible.
Okay.
So I always like to make sure there's a little bit of flexibility to either lower your premium or have it slightly go higher in the future. Okay.
Okay.
Then the next is, I think the no-brainer is what I call the GIR, which stands for Guaranteed Insurability Rider. And that locks in your child's insurability for basically the rest of your life. And depending on the carrier, throughout their life, you can purchase somewhere between 700 and $1 million of additional death benefit with no medical underwriting whatsoever. So
Wow.
I see a lot of times, like, teenagers, like one of a friend of mine, his daughter got diagnosed with osteoarthritis at a young age. And so like, she's going to be uninsurable forever,
Yeah.
So, those are things that as you get older, you kind of realize your health doesn't get better with age normally.
Mhm.
So I think it's a must have, you know, for your future.
Yeah.
The next two are kind of like, what do I use this for, right? And the big question that I came up with, Danny, is, am I going to use this kind of as like the family bank for opportunities, right?
Right.
Or am I going to give this to Layla when I feel like she's financially ready and hopefully she has the education to use this policy, valuable, right?
Yeah.
The right way. And
Right.
so I started kind of comparing the numbers of everything. So let's go ahead and dive into it. And then the last thing I will say is the illustration that I'm showing is there's a lot of good companies. I think as long as you're going with a mutual company, you're in great shape,
Okay.
right? So this isn't to be company specific, which is why I didn't attach the company name on anything. because I think there's a lot of great companies, but I think as long as you're going with a mutual company, you're in great shape. So
Okay.
just to kind of set the stage a little bit here, this was $500 a month. Okay.
Okay.
And basically that flexibility that she has is I can reduce this by about 50%. So if I needed to drop this to $250, I easily could do that.
Wow.
Okay.
In a whole life policy, you have that
Yeah,
flexibility.
correct.
And
Now there's
are
some
there,
rules about if I do that for too long, this will become my new maximum. So there is some limitations, but overall it's very flexible.
you can't go back and forth. You can't go up and down. If you go down and you're there long enough, you may not be able to go back up without additional underwriting.
Correct. But
Okay. And
it's at least 3 years with most of the carriers. So like
wow.
you
And
have
is
kind of
there
a 3 year.
any fees or penalties or riders you give up when you do this maneuver?
No, as long as you're paying the specific minimum, and that I'm going to use like about, right?
Okay.
Because it might be like 260.
Right.
But there's not really any. The only thing that will happen is your cash value will grow slower, right? Because you're not putting in as much money.
That makes
Okay.
sense. Yeah.
Um, so if you look at it, right, the first year, 500 a month is 6,000, and this is the cash value column, cash value, death benefit, right, and outlay.
Premium outlay.
Yeah. Okay. And so
Wow.
if you're looking at it, right, you put in 500 a month, and your cash value is about 50% of what you put in the first year. And because Layla was one, right, so that purchased her 1.2 million dollars of death benefit, right?
Okay. Yep.
You can kind of see how right around year 4, almost every dollar from year 3 to year 4, almost every dollar now is going directly to cash value. So it becomes very efficient very
Wow.
quickly. Um, and so a lot of people say, oh, can I overfund it like an adult? And the answer would be no, because you can't own term insurance on children, on a minor. Anybody under 18 can't have term insurance on them. This also limitation is based on how much insurance the parents have. So some companies will do up to 1.25. Some companies are 50% of the total death benefit that the parents have. Obviously, that's looks a little frowned upon by the insurance companies if you have way more insurance on your kid than you do on yourself.
Sure.
So you can see here. So my vision with Layla, and I'll be honest, and we've talked about it a lot, is I come down to my plan was I would pay for it until year 30. So if we came all the way down here to the bottom, you can see, and I'll just pick 28. Her age 27. I've been paying this now for a while. I have $281,000 of cash, and she has $1.8 million of death benefit.
Holy cow.
Okay.
That's
And
crazy.
so when we're looking at this, I look at it, Danny. I mean, imagine if you're as a wedding gift, so kind of my big milestones, and let me back up 2 seconds, is okay, if I need to finance a car when she's 16, right? I have plenty of cash to do that.
Yeah.
Okay. If I need to help pay for a little bit of college,
Yep.
I have plenty of money to finance that.
Wow.
And none of this is not on the FAFSA.
What does
So
that mean for people who
so
don't know that?
yeah, so when it comes to like college planning, like brokerage accounts, 529s, all of those go against your student loans, right? Goes
Hmm.
against qualifying for financial aid,
Right.
all of those things. So this is one of the few assets that does not have to go on that FAFSA form. FAFSA is the form for college planning.
Yeah.
So it's just a way to hopefully get a little bit better financial aid
That's incredible.
on
You know,
top of that.
I know they made some changes to those laws, but I have a lot of questions I want to ask you about
Mhm.
this policy. So for the people who are paying attention online and hearing about designs like a 90-10, what is this type of design, and why did you go with that over something else? Like, why is this the optimal design?
Yeah, so I think there's a fine line between well first, the 90/10 kind of model, there's always some type of term insurance attached to those,
Okay.
right?
Hmm.
So since you can't own term insurance on a child, it kind of
Hmm.
eliminates the ability to do this, okay? The
Gotcha.
other thing is the 90/10 model is really for high early cash value, right?
Right.
And so, in my opinion, when you're purchasing this for a child, your goal isn't short-term value. Your goal is long-term cash value because the
Gotcha.
way that you're looking 30 years out, 50 years out, and they're still young. Layla will be 40 in 40 years, so it's definitely a long term, and so that's where a higher base, so out of that 90/10
Hmm.
long term, that base will outperform due to dividends. Okay.
Hmm.
So this design specifically is about a 50/50. And then if you count the GRR, that insurability rider, which is included on here,
Hmm.
it kind of takes it to like a 55/45.
Wow.
So, and I've kind of found that if I'm looking 30 years out, it's
Yeah.
kind of the most optimal for early cash value if you need it, plus that long-term efficiency as well. So it's kind of like the best middle ground.
Wow.
But everybody's situation is slightly different.
Yeah. So
Um,
one
yeah,
question before we break, because we're gonna have to put this into two videos. Why would someone use this over a 529 plan?
yeah. So great question. So the first is once cash is earned, right?
Hmm.
So a 529, if you look at like the historicals of 529s, their performance actually hasn't been that good because you have to use mutual funds only, right?
Hmm.
The other thing, so the negatives that, in my opinion, with 529 is the financial aid, right?
Yeah.
So it doesn't really help you with financial aid. There's no, and it has to be used for education.
Mm. Otherwise, you get a penalty.
Otherwise, you're going to get a penalty, potentially a 10% penalty plus ordinary income tax, right?
Right.
Now I know they just passed the rule they have where you can take up to 30 grand and convert it into a Roth.
Hmm.
But still, that's only a maximum of 30,000.
Right.
So to me, with is a few things that are unknowns are financial situation in 18 years when Layla goes to school,
Hmm.
right? I don't know what our financial situation is going to be. I don't know what the education system is going to look like when she goes to college. I don't know if she's going to have scholarships. I don't know if she's going to want to start a business. I don't know if she's going to want to go to a trade school.
Hmm.
I don't know, and so I want to have some options. And when you look at the difference between the 529 and versus the whole life, when
Hmm.
you look at like the cash value difference, it's not enough of a, and we could look at that in a different video. It's not enough of a, this isn't enough of a positive for me to say, hey, 529 hands down. Now,
Right.
I think there's a fine place of a little bit of both, depending on budget.
Okay.
Uh, but does that
Well,
answer the question?
it does really well, and I have a ton more questions, but let's save it for the part two. So thank you so much, everyone, for watching this. Tyler, thanks for making this video with me. I appreciate it. Let's jump on to a part two. And if you enjoyed this video and you want to get the conclusion and go through the final part of the case study, then check out this video. We made part two right here. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you in the next one.